Hey guys, Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you, and here we have the Hogue X5. Now there are a number of variations available, color variations, handle variations, even blade shape variations. This happens to be the tan with black and the Damascus insert. I do wish this was available in satin, but with the features that I wanted and the size that I wanted, it just wasn't an option. So that's fine. I went with the black and it has held up just fine, but I do kind of wish that this blade was satin. There is in the smaller in the 3.5 inch version of this knife, there are more satin blades available. By the way, there is another blade shape that's more of a really different, interesting Wharncliffe blade shape, and I went with the sort of drop point harpoon blade because I felt like it would just be a little more versatile. All right, so that's sort of the particular version of this knife that we're dealing with. Let me say quickly about Hogue is that they do make these very good quality, very hard use, high-end folders, and they've done a great job of that, and I really like their business model or their approach to this more than I like the approach of many other sort of gun brands who try to get into knives. Often they go with overseas manufacturing, and they just depend primarily on the brand to sell the knives rather than on the performance of the knives themselves. Not so with Hogue. They're really doing a great job with putting out some high-end stuff. They are made in the US, so that's a nice thing as well. And so anyway, I do think that, Hogue's kind of banking on the fact that people are willing to pay for quality, and it seems to be paying off for them. So really good way of coming at this, I think, from a business perspective. Now, let's get into this particular knife. As I said, there are a number of options available. You guys know I like the larger knife, so this is the 4-inch option. And let's go ahead and start with size and weight on this particular blade. It is a little over 9¼ inches at 9 and 5/16. The blade, of course, is 4 inches, and the handle is 5½ inches. It's only about 1/2 inch thick, so it actually carries, even though it's got kind of a large footprint, it carries pretty nicely. Now, let me say about that, one of my habits, because I have some nicer knives, is I am really in the habit of never putting anything but my knife in my right front pocket. So because of that, a larger knife doesn't bother me that much. If you're the person who puts a lot of stuff in that front pocket, then that may matter more to you. And this knife is a bit of a pocket hog with that 5½ inches and then almost 2 inches in width in that dimension, okay? But in terms of, finally, I haven't mentioned the weight on this. The weight is 5.7 ounces. So a little hefty, but certainly something I'm willing to live with for a knife of this size and construction. Okay, so there you go. That's the size and weight on this. Let's go ahead now and talk about the blade. The blade that I said I wished was in a satin finish. It's a black Cerakote, full or high flat grind, harpoon blade shape, and really it's a harpoon spear point. I will say the way they've done the harpoon does make a really nice little space for your thumb here, and I've most often carried the knife this way, and I'll talk about that when we get to ergonomics. While we're still talking about the blade, it is CPM 154, as they've proudly displayed there on the blade, along with the designer Alan Lishowitz, and over here you've got Hogue USA X5. Now that if you watched my other video about the Hogue EX01, one of the things I complained about was the blade steel, so it's nice to see them going with a stepped up blade steel here. CPM 154 is really, really a good blade. Or really a good steel. High performance, high corrosion resistance. Yeah, nothing to complain about there at all. And let me say about this that it came razor sharp. In fact, this is, I'm not sure if it's the only, but it's nearly nothing else springs to mind for me, a knife that has come with a nearly mirror polished edge. That's something that I've got to say was very, very good. When I got this out of box, I looked at the edge and I was like, wait a second, is that a mirror polish? Like, that's not something you usually see from a factory. So really, really well done on that edge. And it is very, very good. I've only ever had to strop this. I've never actually done a full-on sharpening on it because it's just held an edge like crazy. In terms of its usefulness, it is that nice high flat grind, so it cuts really, really well. It's all belly, which makes it slice very, very nicely. And I've done everything from, you know, cutting cardboard to wood to vegetables and everything in between, and it just is a really, really good performing blade. This is one of those knives, and this is why I went with this version of the knife. Yeah, it's big and it's kind of, you know, scary looking, but this is a knife that you can carry as your EDC knife, and the blade will just do all of those cutting tasks you need it to do and do them really, really well. That sort of harpoon shape does allow it to carry a fair bit of material out to the tip here, so it's reasonably strong. Now, I'm not going to recommend prying with any knife, and because of that drop point or that spear point with the grind coming in at all points, it's fairly fine tipped. Okay, so I wouldn't go throw this at anything, or I wouldn't want to drop it on the concrete sidewalk if I was carrying it. And the blade stock initially is a little under 1/8 of an inch, so not really, really huge. But more than acceptable, and it's been a really, really good performer for me. So all of those things, you know, I've got to say I do really like that blade. Now, there are among my complaints are really the finish, okay? I wish this were either DLC or satin rather than Cerakote, but you know, it's not available, and so I picked the one that I liked the best, and yeah, I did have to compromise on that coating a little. I almost went with the 3.5 inch just to get a satin finished blade, but I was like, you know what, no, I want the full size. So ended up going with the Cerakote finish. Yeah, other than that little nitpick, I'm not gonna say anything negative about this blade. I really, really like it. It's performed exceptionally well. And even though I'm not a huge fan of Cerakote coated blades, as you can see, if I pick this up and let you, like, you know, there's no real wear on it. Okay, there's a couple little marks there, but I think those would wipe away if I just got a cloth out and cleaned it up. And you can see some of them even came off there with my thumb. So this blade has held up really, really well. So no huge complaint other than to say any coated blade, DLC is the best, but any black coating can wear off if it gets a scratch or if you know, but that, even that is not, you know, wood is usually not going to do it. Cardboard isn't going to do it. You really have to, you know, cut into a staple or something when you're cutting a cardboard box. You got to hit some other piece of metal to scrape it. And, you know, that doesn't really happen for me that often with my blades. Let's move on now to lockup and deployment. This is where this knife does really well. Now, like other Hogues, it is a button lock, and it's a really well constructed button lock. Okay, and button locks are, you know, in a high-end knife, you don't have to worry about it. A lot of times in more budget-friendly knives, you will get a little bit of blade play from button locks because the tolerances have to be just right on in order for button locks to work well. Now, this one works exceptionally well. It's very solid, very cool, very fast. By the way, this is a knife, no side-to-side play now, but it's a knife that if it gets out of adjustment just a little bit, like it has to be set exactly right, or you will get some side-to-side blade play. And that's just a matter of tolerances. And in some ways, I guess that's a good thing. But I will say, you know, if you use it for a few days and it becomes loose, you're going to notice blade play right away. So either you tighten this up every once in a while, or what I normally recommend and what I always do is take the pivot out. Once you get it kind of worked in, take the pivot out, put some Loctite on it, and then set it where you want it to be with a little bit of Loctite on it, and you shouldn't have any more problems after that. And so now it's not on bearings, it's on washers, and it does perform really, really well. So that aspect, or I mean, it is very, very smooth. So there's nothing really to complain about in that aspect. However, what I really want to talk about here is the flipping action. This is one of the few button locks that has a really solid detent. And the way they've achieved that is under the flipper tab here, that part of the blade, you can see how it, you know, there's a pin here, and the blade wraps around that pin. And the way they've done it is, you know, you've got a post. Let's use the pen here to represent that post. And then there's a bit of a bump in the back of the blade. So as you're closing the blade, it's got to pop over that post. Okay, and so it pops over, and that's what holds the blade in very securely, and that's what creates the detent. So then when you're going to release the blade, it's got to pop back over that post in order to deploy it. And it's kind of an obvious idea. Like there was nothing, you know, there's nothing profound about it, but I guess that's one of the things that, that's one of the things about really good ideas is that they're very simple, and when you see them you go, why didn't someone think of this before? And so it's really, really well done. By the way, it does have a lock. I've literally never touched it. I never bother with locks. You know, you guys know if they didn't put them on, I would be totally fine. I just don't see them as necessary at all. But they did put it on there, and I guess some people, you know, sleep a little better at night knowing that, you know, if they want to, they could lock their blade open. The reality is it's still a folding knife, and you can't treat it as if it's a fixed blade, even if it's got a blade lock, okay? It doesn't matter. You always have to treat a folding knife as if it could fold on you, and don't apply any negative pressure to the blade. But lockup and deployment, very, very good. Nice hard flipping action, which is really, really cool from a button lock flipper. We're not used to seeing that. They've really, really done something cool with that. And it'll be neat to see how that is implemented in other knives in the next, you know, going forward. Maybe at SHOT Show 2017, we'll see another knife that has this technology. Really, really well done. Okay, now that's lockup and deployment. Very impressive. Okay, moving on to the handle. The handle is great. It's very ergonomic. It is, of course, aluminum, and it's 2 pieces of aluminum, so no backspacer. I really like that. Instead of doing a backspacer, they just milled these 2 pieces of aluminum so they fit together and lock together, and I think that's a real win. They have a number of variations on this. This one has the G10 insert here, which does add some grippiness. Now let me show you on this side the way they've done this. Notice it's textured here, but then they stop the texturing back here. That's to allow for a place for the pocket clip to slip into your pocket. Now it does work fairly well. However, I'm going to nitpick on this just a little bit. You know, it carries nice and deep, and I really like this pocket clip, especially considering those horrible spoon-shaped clips that are on a lot of these knives. This is a big, big improvement, but I feel like the shape here is not doing as well as it could, okay? This should go straight, and then let me show you this way. Okay, see how, it's hard to hold this in a way that you can, there we go. Okay, see how it's bent down and it touches here and then comes back up? That should look more like this. See how this has a long, continuous open area for your pants to go, and then down here it touches. If this was more like this, it would be much, much better. Okay, this way it provides, there's too much surface area here, so it pinches a little too hard and makes the knife, or now it's fine, but initially it made the knife difficult to get in and out of pocket. It's also very, very tight. So think almost cold steel when you're getting this in and out of your pocket. It was that tight. And so I wish they would just tweak this pocket clip a little bit. Huge improvement already, but it just needs one more little tweak. Lanyard hole back here is nicely placed and unobtrusive, doesn't take anything away from the design. By the way, you can see that pocket clip there, come on, focus, is reversible. There's that little filler tab that then can be just removed, and then you can move the pocket clip over to that side. There's inside, you can see the milled aluminum scales. I gotta say again, I love that they just did the 2 pieces and then fit them together. That's really, really cool. Now, what about ergonomics? Well, it's really comfortable in hand. However, it's very, very much a knife that puts your hand in a particular spot. Okay, this is where and how you pretty well have to hold the knife. You can't kind of choke up or down or anything. It really just locks you into one particular position, either a hammer grip like this, or you know, more of a saber grip with your thumb up here. Either one is very comfortable, but you're not, you don't get any movement, okay? You're not allowed to kind of go down or up. You can, but it gets very uncomfortable and not very secure. I have, and you can choke up a little on this. There's enough space here. I almost wish this were just redesigned a little bit to allow for a choil. That would be a real benefit, but you guys know I do prefer those choils on knives, especially a large knife. Just gives you a little more ability to choke up and get some fine, controlled work done. Anything else? Oh yeah, reverse grip. This is very, very good. They definitely thought carefully about how this knife would feel in reverse grip. It's very, very good that way. Draw cuts or any cuts like that, you know, there's nothing, you know, whatever, if you're cutting vegetables or opening packages, you may want to hold the knife this way or that way. And all of those things work, although you can tell that the handle is not designed for it. It's very purposefully designed to be held this way, right? Like with your index finger there. And in that configuration, it just molds right to your hand and you really lock in. Okay. In terms of being ambidextrous, it does have that reversible clip, but of course you're not moving the button lock. And so it's only somewhat ambidextrous. Let's get some comparisons in here before we get to sort of our final conclusion. Move this up a little bit. And let's start off, if you're interested in sort of large tactical style blades, hard use blades, you can't really ignore the cold steels, especially for the price point. You know, this is a fairly expensive knife, and I don't think that you could, excuse me, I don't think that you could argue that these knives wouldn't do pretty well anything this one would do, okay? But they would cost you, half the price or so. Which I've got to say is pretty good. And cold steel does do a pretty good job, I think, of delivering a very usable, very tough, very reliable knife. What else have we got? Oh yeah, one more cold steel, and I brought this one in because of the aluminum handle. So there's another aluminum handled knife, obviously a little smaller, a little lighter, a little easier to carry while still delivering a lot of toughness. Very smooth, of course, and other people have commented on that compared to these inserts. It'd be kind of cool to, and some people have put like skateboard tape or something on their Code 4 to add just some extra grip. I haven't done that with mine. I don't really find myself being that worried about it, but anyway, just another sort of aluminum handled competitor. Now when it comes to high-end knives with aluminum handles, especially in this size, you kind of got to bring in at least one Microtech. I only have one Microtech, so of course these are great knives. There are some similarities between these two. I think these are both brands that they deliver a very high level of quality, a very interesting, compelling design, and people are willing to pay the extra to get those things, all right? Microtech, of course, is even more expensive than the Hogue, but I find both of these are very attractive, very interesting knives that, people, even non-knife people, are going to look at it and go, wow, that's really a different knife. Like, that's pretty cool. By the way, both are very, very functional, very comfortable, and they both work really, really nicely. I got a few more here to go through with you. Can't really talk about, a large $200 sort of hard use knife without bringing at least one ZT into the mix. So yeah, there's the 0560, and I think these have been around a little while. This is still one of my favorite ZTs, and they can be had now for reasonable prices, especially on the secondary market. So although brand new, this would have been more close in price to that Microtech. There are some of these around at decent prices if you're really interested in that. And I would say if you're interested in the Hogue, you probably are aware of and interested in ZTs as well. Couple more to show you. Here is the Benchmade Crooked River, another large knife, weighs similar. It's maybe a little bit lighter, a little slimmer in pocket, so it's a little nicer to carry. But again, similar size, similar blade length, and similar price point. Now, I guess Benchmade has increased their prices a little bit, which is rather frustrating. I already thought they were a little too pricey, but anyway, that's the story. These were $178 last year, and I believe now they've gone up to like $180 something or $190 something. But great knife. I really, really like these, and I'm sorry, for those of you who haven't got one and are interested for the price rate going up, that's a little frustrating. Let's pull in one last comparison before we wrap things up. This is probably my favorite button lock flipper. This is the Brian Ty and Friends Tie Fighter. It's a mid-tech, and the quality on this, really out of all the knives I've shown you, this is the only one where there's a little more attention to detail, a little more level of quality, and and a little more interest. So that would be the last one that I've got to show you. But I do love the aluminum handled knives, and I really think they offer some versatility, and often they can be a little more affordable. If this was done in titanium or something else, it would cost a whole lot more. Now, there is one downside to the aluminum knives, and that is they tend to show wear easily. In fact, I would argue that aluminum knives show wear even more readily than titanium knives. And I know people complain about, you know, your titanium knife can get snail trails and stuff if you use it. Not the end of the world. I think if you buy a knife, you should buy it to use it, but just know that, you know, yeah, if you carry this around and use it all the time, it's going to get beat up a little bit. Mine hasn't had too much. There's a couple little marks on the butt of the knife there. You know, if it's in your pocket an awful lot, what happens is there's just this little bit sticking out, and I've run into a couple little things here and there. But certainly, Cerakote is a pretty tough coating. It's used on guns an awful lot, and it stands up pretty well. So, not a big problem, but something to be aware of if you want to buy one of these. Overall, guys, I really think this is a win from Hogue. The design and the styling on it, I know is going to be, you know, it's going to put some people off, right? Everyone is not going to just love this design. There are going to be some people that are going to go, that is horrible. And that's the nature of any design that is a little more intricate and has some strong style features, okay? For those who like it, though, I've got to say, you know, if you want one of these, you will not be disappointed. They're extremely, extremely well put together. And they just, you know, Hogue has really done a great job with this knife in particular. And I especially like the way that they have achieved that detent on the blade. Really, really impressive. So well done all the way around. I've got to say, I'm a big fan of these. Of course, I like this look. If you don't, then, you know, you really can only appreciate the quality of the construction more so than the aesthetics. But I think a lot of people will like the aesthetics on this as well. I really like, you know, the Damascus and the color and the angles on this. Really find it a nice looking, compelling blade. Hope you enjoyed the video, and we will talk to you soon.